Whoa.
Whoa. Is something happening?
Whoa, Adam.
Oh my God, is that Indy?
I think there's a bunch of people. There's a bunch of people here. What are they doing?
Hey, look at all these people that are here.
What are they doing on a Wednesday night?
Incredible. What's up, guys? This is Adam and Indy that you're here. Let's get a little twinkle of the fingers if you guys can hear us. All right. See, okay, cool. So I'm Adam Dorsey. I am your moderator, and welcome, guys. This is Mind Sports by WeDeepen, and tonight we got COVID vaccine. Woo! Either are we for the COVID vaccine or are we against? Who's to say? We'll find out, my friends. I am your chat moderator, and so what that means for tonight is I will be working on this computer that I have right here, having you guys get involved in the conversation between our two panels and floating some questions to our audience. And so I'm going to ask a little request from you guys right now. If you can, put your full name, like I have in mine, I say Adam Dorsey, and then your Instagram handle, mine being Adam Dorsey 1. So if you guys haven't done that yet, let's please do that. So this is pretty cool. We got a great event tonight. We literally now have people accessing the space from around the world. So can I get just a little whoop whoop if you are not in Los Angeles? Like a little whoop whoop. Oh, wow, that's amazing. So I'm going to be viewing you guys and your beautiful faces on a screen over here. If you're on the camera and you have questions that you want to ask, I will request that you stay on camera so that you can ask your question directly when the time arises. We got international people here today, so I just want to thank everybody for stopping by, because we got good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. The event tonight should be about 2 hours or so, and then afterwards we will have a little after party. So that'll be kind of cool. It's in a virtual reality space. Christina will pop on at the end, and she'll give you guys all the details on that. And of course, today, Indy, who are we brought to you by? We're brought to you guys by Sex Panther, because 60% of the time it works every time.
I thought we were brought to you by a COVID vaccine, number 1 and number 2 and number 3.
You guys tonight, really, like Indy and I, our whole goal with this is to make these conversations fun. And so please stay active and inject yourselves into the conversation a little bit. And if you don't laugh at my jokes, I will leave. I'll leave. I will leave the conversation.
We might have to inoculate you with we might have to inoculate you.
Yeah, we might. Let me see. Do I have any other notes that I need to hit on? Cool. Virtual after party. Oh, this is also like still relatively new to us. So if we do have any technical difficulties, please bear with us. We're doing the best that we can. We love you so much. And then just one last thank you for you guys to come out. And I want to hit on one thing before I bounce it over to Indy. It's just like, be super respectful. Unlike certain debates, this is a safe space where we come in here to learn. And if we're going to have communities building, what we need, I believe, is to be able to have these discussions in a way where everybody feels safe. So in the chat, when you're chatting with me on the moderator, please keep everything respectful and loving and kind. And that's it for me right now. I'm going to send it on over to my dear buddy, the man, the myth, the legend, one of my favorite human beings in the world, Mr. Indy Rishi Singh. Take it away, buddy.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for being awesome and being such a great teammate and partner in crime, humanity, love, compassion, all that we jam with.
And dancing, baby. Don't forget the dance.
And dancing, partner in dancing too. And by the way, you guys make sure you keep an eye out. Adam's going to be, and he has led ecstatic dance on the beach, silent ecstatic dance thing. So keep an eye out for that, whether you're in Florida, LA, whatever. Adam's an amazing facilitator for that. And
ecstatic dance and an actor. Ecstatic dance LA on Instagram, just ecstatic dance LA. My whole job in life is a connector, so I help humans connect to themselves and be able to connect with each other, and that's the intention behind this space. And that's actually my intention tonight, is simply to serve as a connector for you guys, so this conversation stays like really high vibe and we can all learn.
So speaking of which, before I even get into my spiel, which I definitely can spiel it out over here, and I don't want to you guys get too distracted by this little virus guy over here, on my left or right or whatever direction you're looking at. But really quick, can I get some from the team, can we pop up the rules? You know, we got to have some rules. I mean, what good is this stuff without, you know, what good is any sort of conversation without some sort of guideline, right? So where's my pop-up of the, oh, whoa, there's me right there. Oh, look at how cute this virus is. Isn't this virus cute, Adam? Look at this. He's so like,
yeah, he can,
so adorable. He's
fly,
so like, you know. Sometimes maybe that's the way we deal with, maybe that's a good way to, you know, deal with these little microscopic calamities is we got to treat them with love. Can you give compassion to viruses? So, all right, so let's do this. I'm going to ask all the participants, including those who are going to be tuning in right now, but especially the you know, our featured amazing guests and panelists, or round tablists or whatever you want to call them. So let's go with this. Okay, first things first, I want you guys to raise up a number 1 if you are going to have a mindset of kindness. Number 1, let me see a number 1 from everybody. Number 1, mindset of kindness. All right, you got it? That's good, great. All right, number 2, let's do it. Everyone practices the art of listening. So we're all going to practice a little bit of Bohemian dialogue, okay? Or you can do a number 2 like this, you know, you can do it like this too if you want. So everyone practices the art of listening. We're going to listen well so we can also respond well, all right? So we're going to refrain from reactions and more responding to each other and listening, all right? You guys got it? So we got the number 2 and we got the number 1. All right, last thing is number 3. So I like to do a little mudra. You can take your finger, your little thing right here, and you take these 3, all right? We're gonna do number 3 for don't take yourself too seriously, okay? Have fun. So all y'all, okay? Have fun with this, right? All the doctors on here, all the panelists on here, everybody who's bring some laughter and fun to this table, okay? Because this conversation is very heavy, it's very charged. Let's make sure we have fun because people listen more when you have fun than when you're like taking yourself overly serious. All right, we good with that? All right, awesome. Thank you guys. All right. So let me get it back on me right here. Thank you guys. So this is a very important conversation. You know, I personally have a, you know, interesting background. I went to medical school. I got super stressed out and got ill, mentally and physically ill in medical school because I didn't have any background. We weren't being taught mindfulness or how to take care of our bodies or how to sleep well. And I crashed and burned. And when I dropped out of medical school, I got into Ayurveda, and Ayurveda blew my mind. It changed everything in my life. What it also showed me was, wow, there's a lot of human research, like the research on the human body, the human mind, the connection between the mind and body that people on this earth have done for hundreds of thousands of years that we just ignore. Most of Western medicine ignores, Western science ignores. It's like, just goes like, it doesn't matter what people did, you know, for hundreds of thousands of years, like whatever. What matters is what, you know, European and, you know, medicine has done, which for me, that was a really big struggle. You know, I found that very difficult in my personal life to reconcile with that because I grew up totally being Indian. I turned down Ayurveda. I turned down Indian medicine. I was like, what is this crap? What is this yoga? What is that? That's like total hippie stuff, right? I grew up in California being like, yeah, medicine is like the paramount, right? But we have to start learning how to integrate medicine. And I've myself found health and well-being by integrating, integrating medicine and integrating health from East and West, and everything in between, future and past. That being said, we decided that we would focus this debate, this conversation on the COVID vaccination, the COVID virus. I think the vaccination is really the big key right here, having a very healthy conversation about this. And I want to preface this. We have a bunch of really amazing people. We have doctors on this panel. We have amazing people on this panel. But check this out, guys. We reached out to several scientists, actually some of my really good friends who are scientists, actually, not just anybody, also some strangers that are very famous out there, but also some people who are I'm close with. They had to turn this down literally because they couldn't do it because of reputation, or they couldn't. I mean, these are scientists who are working in the vaccination world, the scientists working in the infectious disease world, doctors and scientists. They had to turn it down either because of themselves and they had some trepidation, or because the institutions they're involved with would kick them out for coming on this conversation. Which for me, I just want to preface with that. I still don't know what to take of that. I want all of you all to take that with a grain of salt. I don't know what that means. It concerns me. Like, it concerns me that we can't have a conversation, a healthy conversation about this. And that's one of the reason why we wanted to put this conversation together, was to be like, hey, how do we find the gray area? How do we find the middle path, the middle ground for where we can step into the future in a healthy, mindful, and respectful way with each other? And that's kind of like, I don't know what to make of those guys turning us down, or those men and women turning us down, but I think it's important that why are they? Maybe we'll go over that in this conversation. What are our thoughts? Maybe the people in the participants in the chat, why do you think that happened? What is going on there? And Christina, do you want to say something?
Well, I was going to say, if there's anyone in this space this evening who is pro-vaccine, is there any pro-vacciners here? We would love to invite you to be a leading voice in the conversation if you're open to jumping in and joining in. Rahul, is that a yes from you? I saw the hand raise. Can you turn on your mic?
Yeah.
Great. So you want to step into that role? I love this. I friend of Rahul, this is great. So you want to jump into that role?
I think so.
Okay, cool.
And
I sound stoked about it.
The objective, because this is a full spectrum conversation, and we have 3 doctors, and as well as Brittany, who's here joining us today, who's going to be panelists, and I don't want to use the word panelist. This isn't a panel.
We got a message from Paul here too, saying that Paul would like to join.
Okay, well, the person that we're seeking to join is pro-vaccine, because we have Bigtree with us, who, if we're thinking of this as a spectrum, he falls far on the other end of the spectrum. So who can stand on the opposite end? Rahul, can you play that role?
Yes,
yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We're going to throw you in.
I preface this by saying that I am pro-vaccine, but certain vaccines and reasons for it, and I'm on the spectrum. So please let me, the tech is good, but the application these days is dangerous.
Cool. We're going to bring your voice into the conversation as well, Paul. I think that's you. I can't see you on my screen, but
Hi, Christina.
So we'll bring you into the conversation. Rahul is going to take the jump into the main role, and then Paul, we have you to back it up, because it's going to be an interactive dialogue this evening.
Hi, Christina. So I would take a pro-vaccine view from a scientific point of view, but there's a difference between being in favor of vaccines and being in favor of any vaccine. Every vaccine is different. And in particular, what I think we'll hear about is how several of the COVID-19 proposed vaccines are different than anything that's ever been done before. And they have their own pluses and minuses. So I think when it gets to the more technical parts about what they're trying to do, we'll have to get very specific about the different vaccines from the different companies, because they're completely different from each other.
Agree, very much agreed with that, and we'll definitely get into that. Especially, it's wonderful some of the people on this in this conversation. And by the way, Christina, what's a better word than panelists that we can use for everybody?
Dialoguers. We're gonna have
dialoguers.
We're gonna dialogue. Yeah, we're all dialogue in this conversation of. We're gonna have thoughtful discourse and thoughtful dialogue this evening.
Bomi and dialogue. Multi-loggers.
Cool. And I'm gonna throw up the poll now.
Yes, please throw that poll up. Let's get everybody's insight and input into that and what they think. And we want to keep it light for y'all. And at the same time, I do want to add in here too. So as we go in this conversation, I'm gonna give you guys a breakdown. We're gonna have the panel, the multi-loggers open up and give little pieces. We're focusing just letting them speak first and give their dialogues first, or multi-logs first, and then we're gonna open it up to a back and forth. I have a bunch of questions that I've prepared that are kind of diving into the virus. So to answer some of your guys' stuff, and so we can dive into the virus, the vaccinations, what are some of the things going on, and then we're going to open it up to the audience for the participants to jump in, literally, to add their knowledge, wisdom, perspectives, and questions for the multi-loggers. And then we'll end it on that. Then we'll go into the after party. It's a virtual space, Topia. It's really amazing. I've been collaborating with those guys. It's a really cool virtual space that we can go in with avatars afterwards. So if you want to hang out and talk a little bit more or have conversation with some of the multi-loggers in that way, that'd be great. Adam, did we get everybody? Almost, huh? We got 27, almost. We're almost there.
Yeah, just about. And I just want to add, thank you guys just all for coming in. I know we're all in search for our next dopamine rush in life. And to take the time to like actually drop in is, first of all, awesome. And I know you could be watching the vice presidential candidates talk.
Wait,
right
that's
now.
going on right now? Wait, that's going on. Hold on one second. I gotta go watch that. All right, I'll be right back.
All right, yeah. I'm going to leave. I'm going to go watch some glue dry instead of the vice presidential debate. And also, just to let you guys know, stay flexible out there. All right.
Stay flexible. Drink your water.
Let's take a look. What do we got?
Stay hydrated. What do we got, Adam?
Looks
like nope.
60,
Nobody went.
67% say absolutely not, man.
I'm surprised that there's only got one Bill Gates. That's really
that was me. That was me.
I'm glad people are being kind. All right, then they're following the directions. Okay, we're gonna have a kind conversation. All right, awesome guys. So I'm gonna kick it off. Are you ready to rock and roll, Adam? Let's do this.
Yeah. I'm ready to both rock
Christina?
and excessively roll.
All right, let's do this. So I'm going to kick it off, this conversation with Dr. Bashwati Bhattacharya. For me, this is great to be able to start with her because she's my friend, mentor, colleague, homie, whatever you name it. I mean, she's an amazing human being for what she's done in the medical space and the breadth of work. She's a Fulbright scholar. She's been an MD. She's worked in public health. She's an Ayurveda, one of the foremost people in Ayurveda, connecting Ayurveda to modern medicine. So, I mean, Bashwati, let's get you on here. Let's give you, 3 to 5 minutes, however long you need to speak and give your first insights and perspective on this. And maybe a quick little tidbit of like why you care about this. Like, why is this important? What are you doing? And where the heck are you right now, by the way, Bashwati?
Okay, so hi to everyone. I am in Udupi, which is in the northwest coast. It's on the Malabar coast of India. I came here for a conference in February, and a friend of mine said, well, why don't you come and do Panchakarma, which is a cleansing technique. Most people in California call it PK. So I said, okay, I'll do that for a couple of weeks, and then I'll go back. And I was intending to go back to my home in New York by March. And it just got crazy. The borders shut down. And so I wasn't able to travel, and it just continued like this. So when COVID started hitting in the airplanes, it was actually not safe to travel. So my friend said, why don't you just wait? It'll be over in 2 or 3 weeks. And then another 4 weeks and another. So we've been watching, and here in Udupi, there aren't really any cases. So what I've had to do is practice with my patients in New York via telecommunication, right, through video conference, which is really good because I haven't encountered a single COVID person face to face. That said, I've had to read a lot about it because I've been writing a newspaper column every week called, it's basically on COVID and Ayurveda, helping people to work with their fear or their encounter with COVID through an Ayurvedic way. And so I've been doing a lot of reading, and I was involved with some of the testing, how do we know it's COVID? And then the control, so do we wear a mask or not wear a mask? Then with the mass number of people, there were actually not very many COVID cases in India. And the third issue I dealt with is that people in America just aren't even getting the proper information about what's going on in India. And I was trying to figure out why they would do that. So once they opened up and allowed Indians to move around more freely at the end of May, some cases did go up, but actually there are a few clusters and they exactly know who's been spreading it. And the question is it more dangerous than a pretty bad flu or a pretty bad common cold? Or what is it? Why is it so contagious? Why is it that some people get really sick and just die. Others are getting really sick and they don't know like why. Nobody can figure out the mechanism. And so I've been studying this for the last, what is this now? We're on month 9 or something. So what we've done in India, I'm going to share in my 1 2 minutes remaining. That is that we use Ayurveda, and most of the people in the South are using a protocol that the government has actually put out for prevention. And then many Ayurvedic doctors are using a series of medicines that are herbal medicines, either decoction form that are preserved in a bottle or in a pill form. Some of it's nasal spray to protect the lining of the nose. And so as these have come out, I've looked into it. And the brief of it is that if you protect yourself and you fortify your immunity, then you're going to do fine. If you boost your immunity using some extract of something, you don't know which part of the immune system it's going to lopsidedly affect. And that's why people are getting cytokine storm by using these interleukin inhibitors or using extracts of plants that are not naturally grown in nature. But if you use the whole plant, what we're finding is that certain combinations are really, really good. So far, we've dealt with, so I live in a hospital now, top floor, and I see patients. And so what we've seen is that the people that use a combination of herbs do really well, just like the viruses that affect the trees. The trees can't get up and walk over to the pharmacy and get an antiviral or a vaccine. And so they have antivirals within their own bodies. And so if we use that, do we need to have a vaccine to protect people? Can we use antivirals? And so I opt for things that are more natural. That said, Ayurveda has been using small doses to kind of poke the immunity, something like what homeopathy does. And if you do it in a way that doesn't have all the crap that vaccines in the modern day have, like these genetically modified, gene altered, replicated forms of vaccines, can we use a vaccine, quote unquote, that's more of a plant-based one? So I'll start with that. I put a bunch of stuff out there, and I'm welcome to more questions as the debate moves forward. Thanks, Rishi.
Thank you, Dr. Bashwati. Awesome, beautiful, thank you. And with that wonderful introduction, we can move right over, because you kind of brought up some things that, I feel Dr. Corey kind of can elucidate and go into and kind of like carry the baton, or maybe have and put also her perspective on this topic as well. So, I just want to preface, Dr. Corey has been a naturopathic doctor for about 20 years, and she also has, a company, the Health Boutique, which has amazing supplements, and she provides amazing work. And she's been working with patients, actually, literally, like face to face. Speaking of doing telemedicine, so Dr. Corey, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Awesome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there you go.
Awesome. Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. So, yes, I have been working with a spectrum of people. I'll call them on the COVID spectrum. So I've worked with people I've worked preventatively. I've worked people with mild cases. I've worked with people that have very atypical cases. And fortunately, all my patients have stayed out of the severe realm. Everybody stayed out of the hospital, so that's really great. And just to be clear, I'm a naturopathic doctor. And so essentially I view that as bridging the gap between conventional medicine and the natural wellness world. So I speak both languages. I've been doing it for a long time. I've been in the industry for a long time when it wasn't cool, even though I'm here at Goop Central. And as somebody that does a lot of, I do a lot of like German biotherapeutics, and also in the true naturopathic philosophy, something like vaccination has always been something to consider in terms of a potential aggravator of certain chronic long-standing conditions. So it's something that we've always, certain naturopathic doctors, I'll speak for myself, have always taken into consideration when looking at the patient's symptom picture. But what I want to say, since this is a topic on vaccination, a discussion on vaccination, what I want to say about vaccines is that I really feel like I don't like lumping them all together. I think you have to take each one individually. They're all different, and they all work differently. A lot of them work differently. So I think when looking at vaccines, what you need to consider is it safe? Is it effective? Is it necessary? And so if you want to break those things down, is it safe? Like, how is it? Is it a live virus? Is it a fraction? Is it, like we're talking about one of the ones with COVID, is it actually RNA from the virus, which is a whole another animal? And then what are the adjuvants? What are the other things in there? What do they do? How do they affect other people? Because sometimes in certain conditions, it can be sort of the straw that breaks somebody's back for more of like an autoimmune condition or a more severe reaction. So is it safe? Is it effective? This is one where I look at the flu vaccine. You know, that one's notoriously not very effective. It's kind of a crapshoot. You know, they're choosing 3 or 4 strains and thinking like, this is the one that's going to come through this year. And maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. And then is it necessary? Again, looking at the flu vaccine. And that's a big topic for COVID, because there's certainly people that think it's super necessary. It's the only way we're going to get rid of this virus. Some people are like, I'm staying in my house until there's a vaccine. So I do a lot of work helping people feel like they're not sitting ducks. There's actually things that they can be doing for their health, for their immune system, and working on the comorbidities, the conditions that we're seeing have much higher death rates from COVID. So metabolic illness, diabetes, chronic inflammatory things. So, what else do I want to say? I think this is also a conversation about public health versus individual health, medical freedom, and it's a very rich topic. And I, as somebody that's been in this world for a long time, I feel like COVID's created the opportunity for us to actually have this conversation and certain people to start opening their eyes to some of the medical stuff that's like running behind the scenes that hasn't been questioned for years and years and years and years. And what else?
Nice.
I think that's good. I think that's about it. So I think there's just like, it's very rich. There's a lot to conversate, and ultimately people have to get educated and weigh the risk benefits and make their own decisions. And I think also the thing to consider is we're talking about like an adult vaccine versus, say, the kids' crazy vaccination schedule. So there's a lot to say.
Thank you, Dr. Corey. Yeah, this is a great conversation. I think that's why we're having this, is that we can have different perspectives. And with that being said, thanks, Dr. Corey. We'll come back to you. Okay. Hold on. Don't hold on to your seat too hard. Okay. All right. Next, let's get Brittany. Brittany Schaefer. She's the author and the host of What Then Must We Do? It's a podcast. So make sure you guys check that out. Brittany, are you there?
I am. I'm here. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Brittany.
Hi.
Please. So please share your perspective, what brings you this conversation, and go for it.
Okay, yeah. So I was a journalist in my professional life. I'm a mom now, and I still write. I just don't get paid for it. I've been writing on vaccine issues for about 5 years now, since they started pushing for mandates in my state, which is California. I'm really coming at it from an individual rights perspective, and from the perspective of, I really didn't speak out about this or write about this until I saw, people started threatening my family with forced mandated vaccines. And so that got me looking both at the problems with vaccines more deep. I mean, we had already decided, just to back up, we were very fortunate. We had a doctor years ago who talked to us openly about some of the problems with vaccines. And she, you know, recommended doing more reading and research, and I did that. So I had kind of a grounding. We decided not to vaccinate, and I was aware of some of the problems with vaccines. What I wasn't really aware of until I started writing about it was the degree to which the conversation about vaccines is controlled and manipulated by the people selling them. And that's something I've written about. It's something other people have written about. And I think it's something that's becoming clear to an awful lot more people now, as we're seeing the same thing happen with hydroxychloroquine. You know, we're seeing the extent to which the medical conversation is really stifled, where information is stifled. And so that's a lot of my focus. But the real points that I'm kind of focused on right now is, you know, what kind of society do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a society where medical decisions are made by some centralized authority for everyone? Or do we want to live in a society where individuals get to decide for themselves what they take into their body, what they give to their children, you know, what they eat, what they don't eat, those kinds of decisions? And what I've been seeing is there's this narrative being pushed by the same people who are pushing vaccines, and I would say it's larger than just vaccines, as some of the others have already talked about. I see it as a whole paradigm struggle. It's really this clash of worldviews. You've got germ theory on the one side, which basically says, you know, we're all sort of at the mercy of these germs running around there. We've got to do everything we can to avoid them. And we're kind of living through the absurd enactment of that right now. You know, what do our lives turn into when our goal is to avoid contact with germs? On the other side of that, there's terrain theory, which is basically saying, you know, your health is not so much dependent on external factors as it is on how you take care of your own body, of your own, you know, are you exercising? Do you get the nutrients you need? Do you not pollute your body with toxins? If you've laid a healthy terrain, you're not going to be as vulnerable to outside pathogens or things that might be a threat. And so I see it as this, we're really, as a society, even globally, this isn't just in the US, we're coming to this clash of these two worldviews. And the way I see it, one of these worldviews takes us in a direction that's very authoritarian. The other worldview takes us in a direction that's more respectful of individual choices. And that's the side that I'm arguing for. So that's my starting point. There were a couple of things I wanted to mention with regard to the COVID-19 vaccine in particular. One thing that I'm not seeing a lot of reporting on this in the mainstream is that, you know, there were attempts to create a SARS coronavirus vaccine back in 2012. And the reason that it failed, the reason that they abandoned this, was that in the animal trials, what happened was everything looked fine. They injected these animals with the vaccine they come up with, no side effects. They were showing antibodies, so it looked like, yeah, they're going to have protection. But what happened was, once they were exposed to the virus they'd been vaccinated against, they had these very severe lung pathology reactions. They essentially stopped the trials because of this. So this is just a question I want to raise for those who might be following this more closely, is, you know, are the trials now, are they giving people vaccines and then exposing them to COVID-19 in order to see if this is happening? Because if they're not, then this is a huge problem that we already know about. You know, this is not guesswork. This is something we already know is a problem. Why is that not being looked into? Why is that not? So that's one big question I've got, one big sort of suspicion I have about, you know, how this could just completely go haywire. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is that, you know, in the coverage, in the mainstream coverage, and I think a lot of people have seen this who haven't even been in this conversation before, is that there's been such an effort to squash information about non-vaccine solutions and non-patented pharmaceutical solutions. There's been and I've written about this too, there was a war on hydroxychloroquine. Try talking about vitamin D. There's a huge connection between doing well with a COVID infection and having strong vitamin D levels. So why is that not on the front page of the New York Times? So I've probably gone over my time now. So, but there's so many issues here, so many different levels and so many issues that we really need to have this conversation.
Sure, Brittany, I would like to, comment on that. Two things. That's funny you say that, because I remember when this first, started kicking off, I shared an article that was actually written by doctors about how the outbreak in 1912 or something, they found that people walking outside in the sunlight really curbed their thing, and it was written by doctors. And I shared that, and I remember getting a thing from Facebook saying I can't, they blocked it, and I was so weirded out, because they're wasn't saying anything crazy. It was walking in the sun showed that it helped people resolve that outbreak that happened 100 years ago. Anyway,
well, here you have to, Indy, I got to interject. You have to understand is that the people who monitor Facebook are vampires, and so they can't walk out in the sunlight.
That's I forget about that sometimes.
No problem. True. Most people forget about it. Sorry, continue.
I forget about those vampires. I also want to say you gotta approach everything with integrity. Make sure you approach everything with integrity. So for all the South Park watchers out there. All right. So next, thank you, Brittany. And we'll come back to all that. I'm sure we're gonna have some good conversations about that. Next, we got Dr. Carolyn Candido, who's also a great friend, and she's a board-certified family medicine physician in Honolulu, who also does a really cool project helping patients not just losing weight, but also anti-aging stuff. And she recently put together an amazing conference for anti-aging with doctors and people from all around the world. I hope you do another one of those. She's really involved in functional medicine, so we'll be bringing that perspective in. So, Dr. Carolyn, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I think back in May, I did a presentation for my patients looking at some of the reasons why Hawaii was having fewer cases than the mainland. And one of the reasons is, sunlight. We got sunlight and fresh air. And I think that vitamin D definitely correlates with sunlight, but also obesity. People who are obese tend to have lower vitamin D. So I did a presentation basically on some of the things we can do to prevent it. I combine Western or natural and natural therapies in my practice. So things like vitamin C, I give in IV form, as well as recommending zinc and vitamin D. And what's disturbing to me is clinics that offer vitamin C, I'm not offering any for COVID patients, but even if you mention that you're treating or preventing COVID, you're going to be shut down. And so the ironic thing is Dr. Fauci admitted that he takes vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc. And all of a sudden it was okay to say it's okay to take supplements. And I think that it isn't a replacement for a healthy lifestyle and diet, but it can certainly help boost the immune response. And my concern is that we're kind of overlooking some of the other risk factors that cause people to be more susceptible besides obesity, hypertension, diabetes. I believe that the liver is a really important organ for detoxification, and we have a lot of chemicals in our environment that are poisoning our body's immune system. And if you have a strong immune response, the innate immune response can destroy the cells that are infected, instead of relying on maybe you don't even need the adaptive immune response, which is the antibodies. So we can be exposed as healthy people to the virus and not necessarily have antibodies because our innate immune response is strong. But when you have a lot of the vaccines are trying to increase the adaptive immune response, which is producing the antibodies. And I think it's concerning that there are side effects associated with them, especially with the old SARS vaccines. They did do a study, and I was just looking at it before this talk, about the different kinds. They had a virus vaccine, I think it was a nucleic acid, an RNA-based vaccine, as well as a virus-like particle vaccine that were tested. And it showed there was a even though they produced antibodies, the people that got it, or I think this is the animal studies, they gave them the actual virus and exposed them. They were more hypersensitive to the viral proteins and particles after vaccination, and that hypersensitivity led to the cytokine storm in especially the lungs. And I think that we have to look at, they are very related, the SARS-1 and SARS-2, which is COVID-19. So they have developed vaccines for SARS-1 and they failed. How are the ones that we're developing different? We are still doing viral-based vaccines, which is weakened versions of the coronavirus. We're still, doing viral vectors as well as nucleic acid-based vaccines and protein-based vaccines. My concern is that when you are inserting DNA into human cells to produce the viral products, as well as RNA to produce viral protein, that can stimulate an immune response, but how can we, control the machinery? Like if you modify human DNA to produce these, M spike proteins, it is going to elicit an immune response, but I think it's almost like gene modification of our DNA. So I'm concerned about the implications. They can insert other things into that instead of just the coronavirus. The other things that I'm concerned about are things like Guillain-Barré with the clinical trial that AstraZeneca, they stopped because someone developed a very similar condition to Guillain-Barré, and there is no the vaccine injury court. They don't have to be liable for any injuries that are results of the vaccines they develop. So the speed at which you're developing vaccines is so fast. 1 year that to go through all those phases of clinical trials, I wouldn't trust the vaccine for COVID. So I think that they should, there's definitely potential, but we should slow down and really have a more open conversation about what are the side effects of these vaccines, because they don't release that type of data, and also look at what are some natural ways to boost the immune system. Vitamins are one way, but also herbs. And I think there was some interesting discussion, and not just from Ayurveda, but places like Madagascar, they actually said they cured it. And the European Union wanted to buy their herbal formula, and they said, no, thank you. We're just gonna, give it to ourselves. And there are a lot of herbal remedies, and I think that all of them boost the immune response, I would say.
Dr. Carolyn, so let's continue the conversation, but please hold your thought. Hold your thought. I was gonna say, Adam, I was thinking like what she was talking about of like them testing and everything. I was like thinking how like isn't this how like some horror movies start, like, or sci-fi movies where like they give everybody like a vaccination and ends up like we're like Will Smith, in the middle of nowhere.
First of all, I've always thought of myself as exactly like Will Smith in every way. But yeah, it very much sounds like the beginning of some really bad, like, Michael Bay film,
Yeah, it's a joke. I mean, viral vectors, there's 25 of those vaccines being developed, as well as the protein base, there's 28, and the nucleic acid, there's 20 of those, which is the DNA, going into the DNA or RNA going into our cells. So that's a lot you know, gene modification going on.
Whoa, and think about all the foods we eat that are all like weird, that probably the same companies are making those foods that are toxic. Anyways, that's a whole nother comment. Let's keep the flow going. Thanks, Dr. Carolyn. You're awesome. All right, next, let's bring on Del Bigtree. All right, he's got an awesome awesome voice out there. So if you can check out Highwire Talk, it's a podcast. Check it out while you can, I would say, right, Del? Del, pop up on here real quick. Please share your insight and thought. It'll give you some time, and I'm sure you got a lot to say about this topic, right?
I mean, I could go on for days, and I tend to go on for days. I'm that guy that the New York Times and Washington Post keep reaching out to. I'm that anti-vaxxer. They want to ask me, am I going to get a COVID-19 vaccine? Why or why not? I think I'm one of the few people. I'm not a doctor like many people on this panel. I am a journalist. I worked for the CBS talk show The Doctors for many years, won an Emmy Award celebrating science and medicine until I made the film Vax, which sort of sent me on this investigation of vaccines. I think I'm the only one here that's actually sued the government based on vaccine safety science. I've won lawsuits with my nonprofit Informed Consent Action Network, lawsuits against the National Institute of Health, FDA, CDC, and Health and Human Services. I get accused all the time of spreading misinformation, and I always say, you should try to beat the government in court using misinformation. We are on to something. I think what you're seeing is a total collapse in the vaccine program itself. This isn't just a COVID-19 vaccine problem. In fact, I've never been happier. I think this pandemic and this vaccine is finally waking people up to what we've been trying to get them to ask about and think about when it comes to vaccinations. You're now watching how the sausage is made. It's ugly, it's terrible, rushed. It's always an awful process. I think that when we're looking specifically at this issue, this vaccine is destroying our lives because we're all waiting for it. This country and the world where our economies are falling apart, the world is falling apart, all in hopes of what I call the vaccine unicorn. I've never seen anything less mature. I've never seen children running the world the way we're watching right now. My father used to say, a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush, or don't count your chickens before they hatch. Yet we are making world decisions, economic decisions, based on a product that does not currently exist on this planet. What I'm talking about is the COVID-19 vaccine. It's a dream. It's like a cure for cancer. When people think that they can pull this off in 6 months, would we believe that? They said in 6 months, we're going to finally cure cancer. We're all getting focused on it. We all know that there's so many different things going on and so many COVID coronavirus vaccine has been attempted for over 20 years now, if not longer. It's a complete failure. I want to give some specifics because we've been talking about it. And I've seen some of the chats are discussing it. The real issue with this vaccine is immune enhancement, whether it's cell-mediated enhancement, antibody-dependent enhancement, or complement antibody enhancement. There are three versions of what we've all talked about in the animal trials. So for anyone listening that's a little bit confused what the issue is, the animals got the vaccine. It looked like it was safe. They saw robust antibody production, which is what we're hearing in these trials right now. But then they did a challenge study. And someone asked earlier, right now it's unethical to do challenge studies in human beings. That's where you actually inject them with the virus to see if the vaccine works. That is not what we're doing in these trials. In fact, these trials are an absolute and complete joke. But one thing is my nonprofit, Informed Consent Action Network, because we've sued the FDA, they take us very seriously now. We put forward a petition just over a month and a half ago, demanding that they stop the phase 3 trials in America until they add a saline placebo group, that we would not accept any statement of safety that did not have a saline placebo group. 2 days later, the headlines from Moderna was this trials being stopped. And within about 5 or 6 days, they have now shifted to a saline placebo. It's one of the first trials in history that is actually going to have a saline placebo. So for the first time ever, we're going to have some form of a double-blind inert placebo study. My nonprofit wanted to make sure that that happens. So we're happy about that. But let's talk about the problems with this trial. This trial is a really great article that just came out in Forbes. Everybody should check it out. Let me see if I have the headline here for people to read about it. The Forbes article, COVID-19 vaccine protocols reveal that trials are designed to succeed. This is exactly the problem. It's always the problem with vaccine trials. We think that the FDA and the CDC and these, regulatory agencies do the safety studies. They don't. Who's doing your safety studies are the very people that are going to make billions of dollars off of the product. So you have to imagine anybody that's doing a study for their own product, putting their own, basically they're the referees in their own race, the referees in their own game. And we're talking about a game that could potentially make any one of these companies upwards of $750 billion if they win this game. When you look at Bill Gates saying that he wants to give this vaccine to everyone on the planet, Tony Fauci has voiced that. Many world leaders are saying they want everybody in the world to get the COVID-19 vaccine. There's 7.5 billion people. This is a cheap vaccine at $100. We're talking $750 billion payout. Make it 2 shots, which most of these are, and now you just doubled that amount. Then add in all the other vaccinations that are going to come swinging in behind it. Really, this has always been just about bringing about an adult vaccine mandate. I've been warning about that for years. Let's be super specific on the trials. The trials are doing everything they can. And the reason we now know is the protocols are now out public. You can see how they're doing it. They're doing everything they can to avoid seeing whether the product is causing antibody-dependent enhancement in the people that are participating. In fact, you'll be shocked to find this. They aren't even trying to see if they can stop death or severe illness. There is not a single part of any of these trials that is going to be looking at severe illness. The only thing these vaccines are attempting to achieve in every trial, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, is to see if they can lower the fever and lower the cough. That's it, the mild symptoms. And if they can do that with a 50% efficacy, they're going to start giving this vaccine to everybody. So they are not even looking at the severe adverse reactions to COVID-19, which is death to 0.26% of the population that have other comorbidities. The only reason you need a vaccine is for this really, really tiny, minuscule group of extremely sick people that are having a dramatic reaction to COVID-19. And not one of these vaccines is even attempting to help those people at all. What they're going to go after is all the healthy people. And so when they say to me, when you start reading that they're going to try and be 50% effective at lowering your symptoms, I'd like to know how that's possible when our symptoms are 0. I mean, we are talking about a virus that you have to get a test to know whether you even have it. We've never seen such a mild virus in our entire lives. There's no flu that can be described that way. We're mostly all asymptomatic carriers, which for the first time we're calling cases. That was never a case. You never called somebody walking around without any symptoms at all a case. In fact, we don't even know how many people have the flu that don't have symptoms because we would never call that the flu. And we have never swept the nation and done testing of everybody who has a cold this year. Really what is happening is a giant money laundering system where they're taking taxpayer money and letting these scientists geek out to ask themselves questions that they've always wanted to know. If we tested everyone in the world, how many have a flu at any given day? How many have coronavirus on any given day? We've never asked this question. No one wanted to spend the ridiculous billions of dollars to get an answer to this question because we're all doing just fine without those answers. This is all what's going on. But this vaccine is extremely dangerous. It could lead to the death of not just 0.25%. This vaccine, based on what many of these doctors have pointed out, could end up killing people. And not, what if it's 1% or 5% or 20%? We are talking about a known issue with this vaccine when we talk about immune enhancement, that it could literally level our species off of this planet. So to rush any vaccine in history, this is the dumbest one we have ever rushed. And let's be clear, in the animal group, this happened in RSV vaccine program that happened in the 1960s. It killed 2 children. All the children, we thought the vaccine was safe, we thought it was working well, and then they came in contact with RSV that they'd been vaccinated for. Every single one had this, cytokine storm and upper respiratory condition that almost killed them. 2 of the kids died, and we ended the program right there. Just over a year ago in the Philippines, we gave the dengue vaccine, the dengue vaccine, same exact problem. Everyone said it was safe. They gave it to thousands of people. Over 600 people were killed as soon as they came in contact with dengue. And now that company's been kicked out of the Philippines. This is a serious, serious issue that not one of these trials is looking to solve. And so
Del, one question.
Sure.
We need to know what you feel.
Yeah, am I not passionate enough about this? Am I not passionate enough about this?
No,
I mean,
nah, I don't sense any passion here. Come on, man. We didn't bring you on here just to like, shoot the shit. All right. Come on, bro.
That's it. I'm going over to watch Pence. I'm out.
That's it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bore you guys.
That was great. Thank you, Del.
Yeah. I could go on and on, but that's enough.
Hold your thought.
Yeah, I'll hold that thought there.
Hold the thought there. We'll come back. So we got last but not least, we have Rahul Sanad. Rahul, are you there? Rahul?
He turned his camera off. Oh, I see.
There he is. So
I am.
Rahul, will you if not counter, but continue the Bohemian dialogue? Like, what is your space and your knowledge and expertise, and what is your perspective on what has been shared up until now? And yes.
Yeah. Well, I think I have no expertise, so I'll put that out there first. But I'm relatively well informed, and I think everything I mostly heard seems like perfectly reasonable. I mean, the reality here is we're not talking about one vaccine. We're talking about a lot of vaccines, and the reality is they are being rushed. And I think the reality is that there has been many different flavors of hysteria over COVID, some that have some basis in, actually what's happening, and some not so much. But like I feel like the last speaker was like too dogmatic over a point of anti-vaccine, probably against every vaccine, against smallpox vaccine and everything like that, and mixing like different things together. I mean, the reality is vaccines up to now have not been a relatively big money maker for pharmaceutical companies. Like, there is money in it, but it's not like where the big money is in pharmaceuticals. And in fact, I would suggest that like the reason the COVID, SARS vaccine didn't move forward was partially because there was just not enough money to really motivate people to keep pushing on it and what have you. So you need some type of subsidization. Like, I don't think this is a big, like, I don't think vaccines in general are a big conspiracy to, slam every adult into taking things they don't want to take. And then I think the other issue is that there's a fundamental, factor with vaccines is that what is good for everybody may not be good for an individual. Like, if you look at measles or something, if everybody else is vaccinated, not vaccinating your kids and sending them to school is probably safer, because there are very rare, problems with the measles vaccine. And if nobody else has it, it's very unlikely they're going to get it. But if everybody does that, then you tend to get problems, and the problems, of measles, I think are much more significant than the, statistical problems of the vaccine or something. So I feel like with the dogma of anti-vax, there's just a lot of, like, you're ascribing, one person's negative motivation to everybody who happens to be on that side. I mean, when you look at people like Larry Brilliant or something, who's, I think explains the smallpox situation very well. Like, this guy is not out to make money. This guy is out to stop people from dying miserable deaths in countries like India and such, and has been very effective at doing that. Like, smallpox is not a fun thing to go through. So, I do think there's a lot of rationality that I've heard, but then also some, a bit of dogmatism of also deciding what is good for somebody who's healthy, who has a lot of information, who has a lot of money, who can afford supplements, who can, that's a very small percentage of the people in the world. And so what may be good for that person is not necessarily good for everybody else.
Thank you, Rahul. Thanks for that perspective. I'm gonna curious. I'm gonna start opening up the dialogue with everybody. And what I'm gonna ask now is what we're gonna switch to is a recommendation that the multi-loggers on this conversation start to ask questions to each other to promote multi-log with each other, asking questions, maybe even role playing in the space. And I can also participate in that too. But you guys can too, because I'm sure you've faced people who are counter to your perspective. So it's so important to role play and give that perspective of the opposite and the anti, so that we can get that perspective. But before to even get that stuff launched and to get it started, I'm curious, because I think it's important to understand this is an mRNA related virus. Are there any vaccinations are there any vaccinations out there for mRNA related viruses? Do you guys know?
Hey, Indy, right before you throw this out there, I'm going to start bringing up the timer.
Oh,
so
okay.
from now on, you're going to have 1 to 2 minutes to speak. At 15 seconds, when it's wrapping up, I'll throw up a timer, and then we'll end with your last 15 seconds. So
there's always a gong. There's a gong that comes up.
Yeah.
So you'll hear. Yep.
So
thanks.
I'm
Go ahead.
hoping that someone can give some statistics, because there's, I think it's Andrew Papp who's typing in the chat that everyone's talking good stuff, but let's get some facts. So I would love to see if there's more recent numbers, but as of 2 weeks ago, there's 176 candidate vaccines out there. Out of them, 36 only have made it into clinical trials so far. And out of those, I think 7 are in either phase 2 or phase 3 trials. So so that's the entire kind of number of vaccines that we think are out there. And I don't know if this is only the Western countries or if this includes China and some of the like Vietnam and stuff. Out of those, there are 5 types of vaccines, and I haven't heard anyone tell exactly what they are. So there's a DNA vaccine, which is Inovio. There's an RNA vaccine, Moderna, which someone mentioned. There's an inactivated RNA vaccine, which is called Sinovac. There is a viral vector vaccine. You guys have heard of the Oxford vaccine. The double viral vector vaccine, which is Sputnik. And out of these 5 different vaccines, you have, obviously it's an RNA virus. So there are a lot of other virus vaccines that are out there. It's not like, they're all bacterial. So with the virus vaccines, the big thing is that viruses replicate. And our body sometimes can track it, and sometimes it's like the Schrodinger, that you can't quite, if you know where it is, you can't quite figure out how much there is or where it is. And if you know where it is, you can't figure out how to control it right there, because it's constantly moving. So how do we work with all these different types of vaccines and different mechanisms for doing a trial with a variety of people that have all different kinds of ways of bringing viruses into their body and creating immunity against them? I guess that means I'm cut off, right?
No. You still have 20 seconds. It's okay. It says there's a timer. I'm done. I just want to know if anyone else has some facts around these vaccines that they'd like to put out there. Anyone?
Hi, I could talk about the different types of vaccines in some detail about what some of the issues with them are and why to be careful about them. But I have a question first for the people that are talking about the natural herbal approaches to making people healthier as it relates to the virus. So specifically, like the stuff that you said was going on in India, but also anything anywhere. Has there been any double-blind, placebo-controlled study comparing the herbal treatment versus a placebo where the person doesn't they're getting? So are we helping them by making their sort of getting them in alignment with their purposes so that their body is healthier, or is it actually a particular herb that's helping them not get the virus? How do we know what's actually going on? And like that was the thing with hydroxychloroquine. They gave it to people and some people got better and they're like, oh, this is making them better. But if you gave them a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and they got better, you probably wouldn't say that that's inhibiting viral replication and doing all these other things, right? So if
that
anyone
works for
can address that would be great.
Andrew. That works for Adam and I. Adam and I do peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and we feel great.
Me too.
Anybody want to take that up?
I can speak to that a bit.
Go
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dr. Corey. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Corey.
Okay. So a lot of the studies have been more I'm not sure the exact name of what you call it when you like look at some of the various I'm spacing on the word right now, but rather than like double-blind placebo controlled, looking at say vitamin D levels in people who recovered versus people who had severe cases of the disease or died. And it was very, very dramatic, and it was a pretty large cohort of people. And then just speaking, thanks, observational studies. And then just speaking from the naturopathic perspective, and somebody, I work with like lots and lots of infections, colds, flus, acute care. There's a lot of studies in the past of just some of the fundamental things in terms of the role that zinc plays in inhibiting viral replication, the role that vitamin C plays. There's studies that came out of China, and this is speaking to the vitamin C, the IV vitamin C, that I can't remember which doc talked about it. From Hawaii. And that they were getting very, very good results with people with severe to moderate cases in the hospital. And the problem became like, I'm digressing, but it's like kind of near and dear to my heart. So I just have to say it because my colleagues and I have not received directly a letter, but my naturopathic oversight organization, there are colleagues of mine that are getting cease and desist letters from the FDA and the FTC saying we cannot speak to how to support someone's immune system naturally. We can't market it. We can't let people know. We can't speak about it on social media. People are getting shadow banned. Posts are getting deleted. And the irony, and this is just to speak a little bit to, I appreciate you guys saying that vaccines aren't big money makers. However, I know that the flu vaccine is being pushed so hard and it's being advertised on TV all over the place. And it's being touted as like the way to like protect your crew and be a flu fighter. And it's not even a very effective vaccine. And so my point in talking about that is like all of a sudden, I don't know if it was Walgreens or CVS, but they're saying, they're advertising now, like not only do we have the flu vaccine and do we have these like pharmaceutical things, but our employees are experts in supporting you and how to naturally support your immune system. And so now they're allowed to say it. So it's just perplexing to me that our doctor, as doctors, our hands are being tied in terms of how we can really help people. And so anyway, Andrew, there are a lot of studies out there about supplements and herbs and stuff in China. But like with so many things, the double-blind, placebo-controlled, it's just, there's not money behind it and time.
Dr. Carolyn, do you have any anything to add to that with the herbs and natural remedies? Dr. Carolyn? Oh, you're muted.
Her. She
I'm
got
muted. Okay, I got it. Okay, yeah, with the herbs, there aren't a lot of double-blind placebo studies because there's no money. You can't patent an herb. So in terms of the studies out of China for vitamin C, I think that you wouldn't do it on a person who has severe illness. I think it would be better to give these therapies earlier in the disease course but we're not really allowed to do that because we'll get, shut down. So I think that when it comes to prevention, there are herbs that have been personally in my clinic, I can't speak to the studies. We definitely use things like N-acetylcysteine, which is really important for boosting the immune system in the lungs. But it's a precursor for glutathione, which, if you guys don't know, glutathione is basically depleted when you give Tylenol. So we are telling, our doctors are being told to not give ibuprofen, to give Tylenol, and we're depleting our glutathione. So I think it's important to use natural ways of repleting that, like NAC. And of course, there are a lot of mushrooms and herbs that are also immune boosting. For example, I'm sure turmeric has a lot of immune boosting properties. But if you talk about that on social media, you'll be, of course, banned. So there's a lot of things that are besides vitamins that have been widely used, and I think that we should consider that immune modulating herbs are also.
Oh boy.
But Bashwati, you have a lot of knowledge on this, and you've spoken. Actually, FDA has interviewed Bashwati on some of these perspectives of herbs and whatnot. Bashwati, will you share a little bit about herbs and where the FDA stands and what you know with India and where they're starting to go with herbal remedies?
Well, if I start talking about everything about the FDA, I'll get gonged at least 5 times. So the brief on this is that the FDA is actually curious. And I just spoke with someone. I'm giving a talk next week at the FDA again, because there's a group of about 1,500 of the scientists at FDA who want to know more about what's going on. And they, everything is being censored. So this one guy, PharmD, called me and said, there's a group of us that want to get together. We invited an Ayurvedic doctor, and the FDA found out because it's all through, official communications, which are monitored. And the Ayurvedic doctor said, oh my God, I'm afraid to do it. Because, most Ayurvedic doctors in the US are practicing illegally, quote unquote. So they said that doctor said, I don't want to do the talk. So I got a call and they said, can you do it? And so we had a long conversation about this. What exactly do they want to know? Number one, they want to know about herbs. So when I gave this talk in 2018, it was August 2018, they didn't want me to talk about peripheral stuff. They wanted me to go right in and talk about Ayurveda. What are the principles that allow the herbs to work? And the second part is, and I had like 75 questions afterwards. It was crazy. The questions were, can we patent? How can we patent? How do we get them patented? There are 3 things patented by the FDA right now, which are herbs. If you guys don't know about it, you should read about it. And crofelemer is the first one. And these are multi-herbal formulations that are actually FDA patented. So it's not true that FDA can't patent them, but it is true that once you do these double-blind placebo-controlled trials, you don't get the efficacy in a double-blinded group that you would when you pick out the people who would benefit the most and do the trials from them. Okay, that's the first part. Second part is FDA is actually kind of bankrupt. They depend on the people that file new drug applications and investigate new drug applications. So the IND right now to file for it costs $1.09 million. Who can afford it? Merck, AstraZeneca, Boehringer Ingelheim. These are the groups that can afford it. You and I, if we have a great idea, we can't afford it. We have to go and get money just to raise that $1.09 million just to file for an IND. So they don't file. Herbal drugs are also covered in the United States under DSHEA, meaning that as long as you don't make a medical claim, you can use it. So what are these herbs doing? They are not boosting one part of the immune system. The entire herb is increasing the entire immune system by fortifying it. So curcumin is not the same as turmeric, right? So you want to take the entire herb and get over.
Hey, you got gonged.
You guys have another question, I can come back in a little bit.
Brittany, I wanted to give you an opportunity since you have a background in journalism, and you have a fellow journalist over there with Adele Bigtree, do you have any questions or anything that you want to bring up with him, or anything you would like to ask Adele Bigtree?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I'm a huge fan of Dell, and I'm really familiar with his work. But the thing that's, I don't know if this is a question for Dell or for everybody, but I'd like for people to ask themselves why, I don't think we have to know exactly how much money the pharmaceutical companies are making from each vaccine or from each drug. Why is there such a concerted effort to censor information about alternative therapies, to censor information about vaccine injury? And this is something I've written about. I can post in the comments some of my articles. Yes, there is absolute censorship going on. Facebook will not allow you to talk about, or they'll flag, or they'll what's the term they're using now? They'll demote your posts if you use the V word. So we use other words now. And several social media companies have explicit policies that they will not allow, in very sort of Soviet-esque terminology, they call it misinformation. But essentially what it is they're not allowing criticism of the vaccine orthodoxy. And it's not just the vaccine orthodoxy, it's the pharma orthodoxy, because again, we saw the same thing with hydroxychloroquine. And when you start looking at it, I just encourage everybody to look at, don't take my word for, I'm using the censorship word, and, I know people sometimes dismiss that, but don't take my word for it. Look at what is being done. Look at the policies of some of these social media organizations. Look at some of the things that have been taken down, and look at some of the quote unquote fact checking that's going on. And then just ask yourself, why is this happening? One thing I just want to get out before 15 seconds are up is the CDC Foundation. Take a look at the CDC Foundation and who some of its partners are. And you'll be surprised to find that some of the people doing the censoring are actually partners with the CDC Foundation.
Del, what do you think?
I'm actually trying to I see that, you have a very educated group of people that are in this chat. And so just, pontificating about ideas, I'm trying to actually get some facts here, because I think one of the greatest lies ever told is that vaccines don't make money. Nothing could be further from the truth. Vaccines made $50 billion in America last year alone. They are one of the top performers. In fact, I'm going to put these links in for people, but I'm looking them up. But here's an article. Pfizer's best-selling drug is a vaccine with an increasingly higher price tag. They're talking about Prevnar 13. Pfizer, one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world, their number one selling money-making product is a vaccine. So to the doctor that said that, I'm sorry, you're dead wrong. Merck's making huge money. I'm trying to look it up right now.
Wait, Del.
Of Gardasil and Keytruda. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Do you know about Operation Warp Speed?
I know about Operation Warp Speed.
What's that? What's the deal with that?
Well, I mean, look, you're rushing a vaccine. There's billions of dollars being poured into that, and the point is that we're already at $50 billion in the vaccine. I have been predicting that there would be a pandemic over the last 2 years because pharma is the most powerful lobby in Washington. They're outspending oil and gas 2-to-1. We fight wars in the Middle East for oil and gas. So what was the goal? Why is pharma buying your president, buying your congressman, buying your senators so that they could take over the world? I know this sounds crazy, but this pandemic is nothing but a world takeover in order to force an adult vaccine program. And yes, it will be worth trillions of dollars. Look at what I just said about COVID-19. That vaccine is going to make hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, and that's just one vaccine. There's hundreds of vaccines and trials that are already in the approval process, 270 right now in the approval process, thousands of vaccines and trials. The future of pharma is vaccines. It's not in drugs for multiple reasons. They don't have to do safety studies properly using placebo groups for long-term studies. That's not done for vaccines. They don't have to advertise because they're forced on you by government mandate. And there's no liability to protect it from liability, unlike every other drug there is. So the biggest cost to pharma is being sued, and you can't sue over vaccines. So anyone that says that these things don't make money, it is the future of this industry is vaccines. Very quickly, there's people that are chatting about the fact that I don't seem to understand that 200,000 people have died of COVID-19. How could I be so careless to say that this is a small event? I have a couple things to say about that. Number one, we have never counted deaths the way that we are right now. We have got to look back and say, if we're going to count deaths, saying everybody, you have to remember, we used to say died of complications from cancer, died of complications of heart disease, died of complications of COPD, every one of us had parents and grandparents that's what we were told. What did that mean? They had pneumonia. How did they get pneumonia? The flu, a coronavirus, or a rhinovirus. That's how people die. When you are on your deathbed with these diseases, you're going to get taken out by a common cold. And that's what's taking place. Now, for the first time ever, we are naming that complications of COVID-19. So if someone wants to have an issue with 200,000 deaths, let's go back and see how many people died of the flu. If we look at every cancer death, every heart disease death, every COPD death that actually had the flu and say they died of flu, you would find out that 300,000 to 500,000 people every year die of the flu. If we're going to not talk about their comorbidities. This thing is a giant Ponzi scheme.
Thank you, Del. I want to respect all of the amazing participants. First of all, does anybody want any of the multi-loggers on here want to comment before I open up to the participants who want to ask questions? You guys all good? How you guys feeling? Dr. B, Dr. Corey, you got your hand raised?
Yeah, I just want to say, Christina, did you need to say something?
I was just going to say open it up, but go ahead.
I just wanted to say something that I'm certainly a big proponent of supporting the immune system, of terrain theory versus germ theory, or, looking at germ virulence and terrain and that interaction. And I just wanted to share something with you guys because I had my eyes opened around COVID because I felt like, why is this such a big deal? It's the majority of people have the comorbidities, have the chronic metabolic issues, are elderly, and even the people that they say are like healthy that are dying, often you look at their diet, you look at different things, they probably have some underlying stuff going on. However, I had a colleague, a 30-something-year-old, very healthy naturopathic doctor doing all the preventative stuff, doing all the things, got sick with COVID and got really, really sick, was basically told to get her affairs in order and in the hospital. And she did all the IVs, all the oxygen therapies, all the things you could even imagine. And she made it through probably because of all the things that she did. But this virus is weird. And there are some really big outliers. And one of the things that I actually learned from my friend Andrew, who's in the chat chatting it up, was that this virus recombines. There's like not just one strain of the virus. We knew that maybe there was two, like one from China, one from Italy, but actually like the flu virus, it recombines, and mutates. And so we might be looking at like this whole spectrum of things, which actually is one of the issues with the vaccine, that none of the vaccines are looking at the possible mutations and those complications.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Adam. Was somebody gonna say something? Who's that?
Curtis Cost. I don't know how to raise my hand, but can you hear me?
Curtis, I can hear you.
Curtis, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of people talking about viruses mutating and all these things they can do. I just want you to say there is another school of thought. I mean, I've organized interviews with PhDs on this topic, and one of the things that they've brought out is that this COVID virus has never been proven to exist. And the only way, I'm sorry about the darkness and the lighting, I don't know. But in any event, no one has ever obtained a purified sample of this SARS-CoV-2. And that's the first step before you can start talking about, well, if you do know somebody, great, let us know. But no purified sample, and nobody has been successful in following Koch's postulates, which is necessary to prove that a pathogen is the cause of anything. So I think we might be jumping the gun talking about viruses mutating, doing all this. I mean, based on my understanding of what I've heard from the experts, viruses do not fit the criteria of life. They don't have a digestive system. They don't produce waste product. They don't have a metabolism. They don't move. They don't fit the criteria of life, yet it's able to do all these magical things.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Curtis. Thank you. We want to get Dr. Wait, hold on 1 second, guys. Hold up. We're gonna lose the kindness of what we're doing here. Adam, I think you had messaged me about Dr. Ali, who's a doctor here as well, who had a rebuttal to Del Bigtree. Adam, is that right?
Yes, Dr. Ali had made some solid points in the chat, and I'd really like to go to him for a moment to highlight your thoughts and your rebuttal to Del, please, if you're with us.
How much time do I have, gentlemen? Thanks for having me on.
Thank you,
How
Dr.
much time
Ali.
do I have?
You got a minute.
Huh?
You got a minute.
1 minute?
Give him 2
not
minutes. 2 minutes.
All right, 2 minutes is good because he was yammering for a good 20 minutes. So, all right, I got my timer on. Boom. So, first of all, here I'm having a great Wednesday night here, swinging from my little bottle of vodka. And later on, I'm going to go driving around Santa Monica. It's going to be great. I'm just a little bit drunk. It's fine. How do you guys feel about that?
Not good, dude.
Okay, good. And this is why we have laws, why you can't have the individual right to drink and then go drive. Because, hey, you may have the individual right to kill yourself, but you don't have the individual right to kill other people, but with your stupidity, right? Your rights end where my nose begins. And this is why we have laws about vaccination, or we should, because look, some people just don't have the information or the savvy to make these decisions on their own, and thereby they affect other people whom they didn't want to be affected, okay? Now, here's the thing. The problem is that in this country, expertise has kind of been thrown to the side, and I'm here to tell you, you're sharp people, but your Google search is not equivalent to my 4-year medical degree. That's just not, okay? I know more than you. I read 180 books a year. I know more about this stuff. And you don't just ask your cousin to come and do your plumbing job because he went to a website and said, hey, I know about plumbing. You actually hire a plumber to do that. So, a little respect for expertise. Also, the thing I'm noticing is you guys are a bunch of unbelievably privileged motherfuckers. I grew up in Iran. I was 13 years old. I lost an aunt and an uncle by age 9 and 10 to polio. You guys have probably never seen somebody with polio, okay? Whooping cough, you've never gotten it. You've never seen a kid with whooping cough. Mumps, measles, rubella, all this stuff, okay? Vaccines have saved your asses, and now you get to sit here because vaccines save your asses and tell people vaccines are bad. That is just tremendous, stupendous, insane privilege, okay? So what I recommend is, hey, go read stuff, go learn stuff, defer to people who know more than you, and if anybody says something can boost your immune system, that means that they really haven't done their studying, okay? You cannot boost the immune system. The immune system is resting on this knife edge of doing just enough to get rid of pathogens from the outside and not attacking the body itself to get like an autoimmune disease like lupus or worse, okay? So if you have ever said to your patients that go do this to boost your immune systems, that means you don't understand how immunity works. So that's all I've got to say.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Ali. Very interesting. Does any of the multi-loggers want to respond?
Dr. B.
I would like to, since that was supposed to be aimed at me.
No, just in general.
Go for it, Del.
Well, I just want to say once again, it would be great if a doctor could use a fact instead of anecdotal stories. Medicine and science is not based on anecdote. I feel bad for the family members that he had that apparently had polio and had those issues. But for instance, one of the things he's got dead wrong is when it comes to pertussis. The pertussis vaccine is now scientifically known to not stop transmission. In fact, we have a lawsuit about this. When they did the baboon studies just over the last couple of years, what they recognized is after the vaccine was given to the baboons, contact with pertussis. They got the pertussis. They just didn't have the cough. So all the vaccine did was take away the symptom. So now we're having pertussis outbreaks because of the vaccine. Even worse, in a study last year in 2019, they found that those that are primed with the pertussis vaccine are going to catch pertussis more throughout their lifetimes. There's no way to undo that mistake. Unvaccinated children only get it once and they move on with their lives. If grandma and grandpa get a pertussis vaccine, they don't have the cough, and they're being told to get that vaccine in order to visit your baby, your brand new baby. But now what we've done is taken away the alarm system. If they go and visit that baby, they could be silent killers. They just don't know they have it. That's a serious problem with the vaccine. Measles had a death rate of 1 in 500,000 in the United States of America in 1961. That's you can read that fact at the CDC. 1 in 500,000 died from measles. Hardly a reason to start vaccinating all the healthy children that are out there. I could go on and on, but my minute is about up. I understand.
Oh, no.
They said WHO meeting last December that a doctor is lucky if they had more than 1/2 a day of education on vaccines. I didn't say that. That's one of the head people at the WHO. They're talking about learning to teach doctors about vaccinations and how they actually work. But the truth is you don't understand the science. I'm not talking about you personally, but a doctor cannot list the ingredients in a vaccine. They do not know the side effects. They are just told, here's where you put it. You're going to get some swelling in the arm. There may be some fussiness. And if you disagree with me, I'm going to kick you out of my practice and tell you an anecdotal story about how we stopped it.
Thank you, Del. Thank you, Del. And you know, I want to keep in mind there too, you know, y'all, this is a lighthearted conversation. So when we make any sort of attacks on each other, we actually lose. We lose when we make an attack, because we want to actually have a and otherwise it doesn't go anywhere. Anita, Nick, I know you guys are on next, but we do think that she has a lot of purview on this, considering what she has been able to accomplish in her life, just from her patients. I've shadowed her, so I know personally she has been very successful working with all kinds of people with autoimmune diseases and you name it. So Dr. B, what do you got to say?
Oh, sorry, can you ask that again?
You were going to respond to the about what Dr. Ali said about boosting the immune system and how that's not possible.
Well, it is possible. And actually, I want to just ask what who are very highly educated, in fact, so educated that they tell everyone else to be quiet, what they define boosting the immune system as. Because I think if we don't have definitions, there's a big problem. So if Dr. Ali could just define what boosting the immune system is, then we can go from there.
Dr. Ali, can you do that?
Yeah, I've never used that term in my life. I'm not the one who's supposed to define it. The people who are using the term are supposed to define it. Boosting is a marketing term. It's completely meaningless. What does it refer to? Are you making T cells more responsive? Are you making B cells more sticky? Are you increasing the amount of antibody per unit time, per unit body? It's complete nonsense. It has absolutely no basis in reality. And the people who use it, hey, look, you make big claims. The burden of proof is on you. I did not make the claim that anything boosts immunity. I say there is no such thing as boosting immunity.
Well, wait. So I can give you one example.
Can we go back to Dr. B there, please?
Wait, go back to Dr. B. Hold on, Andrew.
Okay.
Dr. B. Dr. B.
Oh, go ahead, Andrew, and then I'll go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to give one example of something that actually boosts the immune system. So when they give a protein-only type of vaccine that's not live and it doesn't have any other things in it, they add a thing called an adjuvant, and that does boost the immune system by creating an inflammatory response similar to the way a virus does, and that is something that is rightly considered an iffy thing, and they're always trying to adjust the amount of adjuvant to get it right so that you get a big immune response to the protein vaccine and you don't end up with autoimmune disease. So that's something that actually boosts the immune system above its normal level.
Okay, so I think what you're talking about is what Antonia just wrote in, which is about triggering. So this is where definitions are really important, because when you trigger the immune system, when a baby takes in its mother's breast milk and it gets all that IgA, is that boosting? Is that triggering? Is that innate immune system? Is that adaptive immune system? We need to get our definitions clear. And as immunity evolves from the 1960s and 70s, where they didn't know very much, HIV brought in a little bit of knowledge, and now what we're learning, there are different kinds of definitions for what is happening in the immune system. The term boosting is not lacking in reality, which I think is kind of disrespectful to the entire yoga community. The term immune boosting was used during pranayama, when people would do pranayama and they would find that the B cells and T cells were actually heightened. And this was done, obviously they were just blood studies, but these were called immune boosting measures. And the term was actually discovered in pranayama. And it's been taken forward now recently to talk about the COVID system.
Bashwati, keep getting gonged. It's your day to get gonged. Wait, hold on. I want to keep the conversation also with respecting the woman. Adam, I think Anita, right? Didn't Anita have a question? She had her hand raised.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. Go ahead, Anita.
Thank you. My question is about the history or the trajectory of vaccines over the last 40 years. I was born in 1979 in Germany, and got, all the routine vaccines at that time, which I think were just maybe a handful, like 5 or 6. And I actually survived whooping cough and chicken pox. And, all these years later, in the last 20 years especially, it seems like the number of vaccines there's so many more administered to children. And then we are seeing more and more concern amongst the medical community around adverse effects. So what changed? What is now being administered in vaccines that is causing so much more illness and has 64% of people concerned about administering vaccines to their children? What is the main problem really in the last?
Could I address that really quickly?
Sure. Yeah, I was going to ask you, actually, Brittany. Perfect.
Yeah, so one thing that changed was that in 1986, vaccine manufacturers were given immunity from liability. I'd say that's the biggest thing that's changed.
But ingredient-wise and content-wise, what has changed?
I think quantity-wise, you just look at the numbers of vaccines, ingredients. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, how the ingredients differ between the ones that were given then and the ones that are given now. But certainly quantity-wise, if you look at the schedule I was growing up the same time you were, and I think I had, 4 or 5, maybe 6 vaccines my whole life. And now it's like 60, 70 by the time someone's 16. So just the sheer quantity, I think, explains a lot.
Oh, quantity of vaccines per person.
Yes.
I see. Yeah. Does anyone else?
And when they
does the research confirm that?
And when they start giving the vaccines, so they start giving vaccinations now at birth, right when a baby's born, and they're giving things like hepatitis B right at birth, which may or may, depends how you look at it, it may or may not be a necessary vaccination. And I think this conversation too, I have to go back to you have to take each vaccine individually when looking at the different constituents in it, and looking at the different adjuvants, like the things that are supposed to trigger the immune system or the immune response or the way they work in the body and how many they're given. And a lot of times doctors, kids will get vaccines when they're sick, and that's not supposed to happen. And there's so many different things that can happen. And I do just want to touch on what Dr. Ali said about, what I brought up again in the beginning. You need to look at public health and sometimes individual health. They don't always mesh. And so when I speak to my colleagues and friends in public health, currently during COVID, they say you have to give people simple things to do, maybe 2 things to do. So in this case, it is wear a mask and social distance. Those are 2 simple things that people can do. But what I've called upon public health to do is how about all these underlying conditions and these comorbidities, like why aren't those being addressed more? And that's when it starts to get into like the food industry and our diets and people changing their diets. And I think people have given the opportunity, they would, but that's not necessarily the domain of the public health department. And I digress. So that's what I was saying.
Thank you. Can we bring in Nick? Nick had a question for the multi-loggers. Nick, you there, bro?
Yep, I'm here.
It's been a good minute, bro. I hope you're doing well.
I am. So I feel like the question I'm going to ask has sort of been danced around a little bit, but I'm going to try and gel it down. And I want to talk about individual rights and collective action. And there's been a lot that's been said about efficacy and risk, and like I kind of want to set that aside and go up to an abstract or more principle level and say like, all right, you know, what kinds of risks are you willing to take, and what kinds of rights are you willing to give up on behalf of your larger community and in service of collective action? So I feel like that's sort of a quintessential aspect of all of these concerns. Like, if you believe that there's risk here, if you believe that there's not, if you believe that you shouldn't be forced to do a thing, if you believe that you should, it kind of gets to that as a question.
I mean, maybe I can add on to that. At what point do we just say like, okay, these amount of people are going to die and that's it? Like that, is that also included? Cause like we do that with the flu, and we do that with some other stuff.
I wouldn't quite
like
say
that.
Sort of the reverse. That's asking other people to take on that risk for you. It's on a personal level, what are you willing to give up and what risk are you willing to take on behalf of the collective, rather than what are you asking the collective to take on behalf of you?
Does anybody want to take that on?
I'd love to address that. Could I say a few things about that? So first of all, I think that is the key question. To me, that's what this is all about, is, you know, whose rights are we talking about? And, you know, when you talk about the collective, I don't think that's a real word. I don't think that means anything, because there's always going to be some entity, some body, some authority deciding what is in the collective interest. So it's a very dangerous word. And I think we spent the whole 20th century learning about how dangerous that word is. So just leaving that aside, you know, the whole idea of talking about a collective good, that's fraught with a lot of danger. But what I want to say is that, you know, everyone in a free society, in a society of free people, everyone chooses their own risk. And if you personally are worried about, you know, the risks of COVID more than the risks of the vaccine, everyone's risk profile is going to be different. Mine's going to be different from yours. Our information is different. So in a free society, people choose their own risks. And my time is running out. There's so much more to say about this.
Can I dovetail, and then you and I can go back and forth?
Yeah,
so I have an MPH, and we tossed around this question of ethics. I do have an individual right, but as someone said, you know, my right ends where your nose starts. You have the right to not be harmed by me. And when we think about vaccines, there is a real issue that harmed by what we have. So I don't want people to from they die, but they get handicapped, disabled, otherwise hurt, that we have to take care of them. That's my taxpayer money, and that's not fair. So that is what a lot of the pro-vax people are saying, is that we want everyone to get vaccinated. And there are a few people that are really sick. And so if over 80% are immunized, then herd immunity will just make it so rare that the that the virus is able to be around in the population, that those other people that are weak will get protected. So I understand that that's a really big concern. And I understand that the numbers are actually kind of manipulated. And that's my big concern. What we are taught to believe is that polio is now gone. Polio is not gone. Endemic polio is gone from Africa. The polio Vaccine-derived cases are on the rise, and no one is tracking them, and no one is talking about them. Why? Because the Salk vaccine, which is not even talked about, the Sabin vaccine, has been purchased by the WHO and given to everyone using all the money that it takes to do cold chain and saying vaccines work. And looking at polio, looking at, you know, measles, oh, that's our proof for it. No one is talking about the harms that we need to look at as a society. And I think what people are asking for is not vaccine, no vaccine, but the transparency to really understand and to make decisions collectively, whatever that means, based on real facts. And the real facts are not there. And as someone that's gone to real medical school, as someone has said, whatever that means. But as someone has gone to medical school and through medical school, there's a lot of stuff we're not taught. There's a lot of stuff that if you raise your hand and ask, you're considered to be a villain for questioning the system. That is not science. Science is open curiosity for all things without the dogma that you cannot ask certain questions. If I want to ask, how is my education different than a naturopath or a homeopath or an osteopath or a napropath? I should be able to ask that question without being accused of being a quack or something. The same thing with vaccines. We should be able to ask, what does that adjuvant do? What is the role of thimerosal? What is the mercury? Are you purifying the mercury before you put it in? Are you they're not good for the line, but that are good for the human system? These are questions that we should all be asking. Thank you.
Could I also?
We're actually gonna respect everybody's time. Sorry, Curtis. We're actually gonna. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Let's close. Get some closing comments. Bashwati, I'm gonna absorb that as your closing comment for now. Thank you. Del, would you like to I'd like to give you a minute to be able to.
I want to answer the question in the way that was asked. What am I willing to sacrifice for the good of the whole? What I'm willing to sacrifice is I'm willing to take the risk of catching COVID-19. And my wife is willing to take the risk of catching COVID-19. And we are willing to have our children catch COVID-19 in an effort to reach herd immunity as soon as possible. Let's be perfectly clear. Herd immunity is the only way out of any virus there is on this planet. And you're only going to get to it by two ways, either vaccination or catching the illness. And now that we know the vaccination is already saying it is not going to stop transmission, that it at very best will only lower your symptoms, then we are only wasting time. We have got to get to herd immunity. There are great doctors and scientists. In fact, over 10,000 have now signed a document around the world. It's growing every single day. Everyone should sign it. And what they're saying is this: let's protect the elderly and those that have the 2.5 comorbidities. Let's protect them for another month or two. Get our children's masks off. Get them in school. Get them catching this illness because they have no risk whatsoever. I have barely any risk. Let's get to herd immunity so we can lower the death rate. We are killing people because we're slowing this virus and we're letting the elderly catch it. All the young people should get it right now. I'm willing to take that risk for the people.
You're on mute.
Rishi, you're on mute.
Indy.
Dr. Corey, will you have a minute?
Okay. So I think I would be willing can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. If there was a vaccine that we knew was safe, that we knew was effective, that we knew could get rid of COVID, I would consider taking that risk. But here's the deal. That doesn't exist. The virus is mutating all over the place. So that even puts herd immunity into question for me. Like, is that even a possibility when it's mutating everywhere? None of the vaccines work for the people that are really at risk. So people with metabolic disease, obesity, elderly, they don't mount good immune responses. They don't mount a good response to the flu vaccine. They shed the virus more. So it's just like, if it was like perfect and low risk, I would do that for the good of everybody, but that's not here yet at all. So what I'm willing to do is take really good care of myself and take the best care of my patients I can.
Awesome. Dr. Carolyn.
Hi. So I would not take the vaccine if I would consider it only if there were no side effects, but I mean, realistically speaking, I mean, we have only like less than a year's worth of data, and who knows how many more people can be affected by the side effects versus dying of the disease. So I think we should take also personal responsibility for our own health and eat better, exercise. Those who cannot do those things can't take responsibility because they are disabled and they're elderly. We need to protect them and shield them from getting infected by giving the staff proper PPE. We could have prevented all these deaths if we isolated those nursing homes. And exposing, you know, children to COVID, it's not going to cause as much death as an elderly person. So yes, we do need rely on the vaccine to save us.
Thank you, Dr. Carolyn. Brittany.
Yeah, so
last but not least, do you have any closing comment?
Yeah, I do. So I'm with Dell. I'm also willing to get COVID-19 in order to help get herd immunity going. I also want to bring it back to my initial point, which was about a paradigm war. And there are two ways of looking at quote unquote public health. Again, somebody always decides what that means, but either each person is responsible for their own health, or we're all responsible for everyone else's health. And it's like any other kind of collectivist system. If you're responsible for everyone else, that means you have power over everyone else. It means that you've justified authoritarianism. And the other point I wanted to make about this is this whole idea comparing, you know, not being vaccinated or comparing walking around with germs to driving drunk. It goes against, you know, hundreds of thousands of years of human development and human evolution. We have evolved, our immune systems have evolved by virtue of us interacting with each other and getting infected and the T cell story right now is one of the biggest stories in the news. The reason that those people are better protected against COVID-19 is because they went out and they got other coronaviruses in the past. You don't need to be exposed to a particular specific virus in order to have protection against that virus. The reason those people are protected is because they went out and interacted and got exposed to other viruses.
Oh my gosh, this is just, seems like the conversation is just getting started, you guys. Listen, this was a great, I want to respect everybody's time. We have an after party in a virtual space. So if you guys want to continue conversation, maybe some of our multi-loggers will want to go in there. We're putting up the poll again. Maybe your guys' minds have changed. Maybe it's the same. We'd love to know. It's kind of fun to see what's been the trajectory of this conversation. Has anybody changed their mind, or have they stayed the same, or has it significantly changed? Adam, bro, like, are you gonna do the vaccine? How you feeling?
No, but my opinion at the beginning of fuck Bill Gates is still the same. And no, I'm same as Dell, is that I would be